Have you ever felt like life was playing a really bad joke on you? Like you had great plans, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and then bam, just like that, the universe, or maybe just your boss, decides to pull the rug out from under you. Years ago, that's exactly what happened to my oldest daughter and her husband. They waited 4 years into their marriage to have kids because they wanted to save up and get financially secure. My son in law even landed an assistant manager job and their apartment building, and everything was going exactly according to plan. And then, just like that, my daughter was nearly 8 months pregnant and he lost his job. And to top it off, their rent was about to triple, forcing them to leave immediately. The timing was so comically bad, you'd think it was an April Fool's joke, which it just happened to be, by the way. He lost his job on April 1st, in the middle of what looked like a complete disaster. They had to move quickly. It felt like God just had forgotten about them. Or maybe their careful planning was just all for nothing. But here's the thing about God's plans. Sometimes what looks like a complete setback is actually a set up for something better. They found a new place to live, a duplex with a front and backyard. It was perfect for their new baby, and their dog finally had room to run around instead of being locked up in an apartment. It even had a garage, and they absolutely loved it and ended up living there for years. What they couldn't see in the beginning, God was thinking about a house, a yard, and a whole new neighborhood. He was thinking about neighbors they could talk to about Jesus and new friends for their future kids they didn't even know they were going to have. What seemed like a disaster at the time was actually a gift, leading them to a place that was much better than they could have imagined. I remember watching a movie as a teenager about a woman named Joni Eareckson Tada. At that time, I was dealing with my own struggles, and watching her in the movie face her quadriplegia with faith completely changed my perspective. You see, Johnny's life took a dramatic turn in 1967 when at 17, a diving accident left her paralyzed from the shoulders down. This wasn't just a physical injury, though. It was the loss of everything she knew. Joni trusted Jesus with her life, but at that moment, life was feeling incredibly unfair. She initially struggled with anger, feeling betrayed by God, but through prayer and the support of other Christians, she came to persevere and hang in there, knowing there had to be an answer. And then one day, God sent her someone, and they said to her, Joni, God permits what he hates to accomplish what he loves. Joni's life is a powerful example of this. She famously says, I would rather be in the wheelchair I'm in right now, knowing Jesus, than to be on my feet without him. Her story shows us the power of God's love, and it's often displayed most profoundly in our weaknesses. Through her organization, Joni and Friends, she has provided wheelchairs and Bibles to people with disabilities all over the world, bringing hope and dignity to those who need it most. So why does God allow it? Well, this brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Why God? Why? Why would a loving God allow suffering? For my daughter and husband, they could not see past their immediate problem of where to live, and their rent was going to go up 3 times the amount. As well as Joni couldn't see past her paralysis. But in both those cases, What seemed like a closed door was actually God opening a bigger one, a more meaningful one. Joni Eareckson Tada also has an incredible way of explaining this. Listen closely. She pointed out that God permits his own son, Jesus, to undergo extreme torture, for him to go through injustice and death. Why? Because the world's worst murder became the world's only salvation. Let me repeat that. Because the world's worst murder became the world's only salvation. Can you process that? It took me a few weeks before I could understand completely that statement. It was an incredible, and still is, an incredibly hard truth. In essence, God allowed what he hated, his son's suffering, to accomplish what he loved, the salvation of humanity. This wasn't a punishment for Jesus, but the ultimate act of loving redemption. Jesus' willingness to endure the deepest pain paid the price for our wrongdoing, offering us a path to eternal life. For you, for me, wow. So when life feels unfair, remembering that God's plan isn't always what we expect, he might take away something we think we need to give us something even better. He might use our suffering to bring about incredible good in our lives and lives of others. The answer to why God is that he can use the most painful circumstances to bring about his glory and bless countless lives. So how do we get through those moments? How do we find the strength to trust him? We follow the instructions found in Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. It's in these actions, maintaining hope, even things when they seem dark, enduring with patience, and staying in constant prayer, that we find the strength to trust God's plan. It's what Joni Eareckson Tada did, it's what my daughter did, and it's what we can all do when life feels so unfair. So whatever you're facing, I encourage you to take a moment in your situation and find your Romans 12:12. Walk the steps in rejoice in hope. Got no hope? Well, hope is that deep, confident joy that exists even in the midst of suffering, because it's anchored in the ultimate promise of God. Be patient in tribulations. How? By focusing not on the pain of the present, but on the certainty of the glorious future with God. And pray all the time, continuously. It means to talk to God throughout your day. Talk to him when you are thankful, when you're angry, when you're anxious, when you're joyful. Continuous prayer is like breathing. It's natural, it's constant, life-sustaining function for believers. You could read Joni's book. I'll put the link down below so you could read about her story. And I'll also put the link down for Joni and Friends and how she reaches out to the world for Jesus. Remember, because he lives, it does change everything.